Science shows us that if you really want to break a habit or change a habit, you need to join a tribe, and you need to get that tribe to help you. So Andy Ramage, today's guest on Zestology, did just that. I'm Tony Whiten. Thanks for listening to Zestology podcast. As always, I'm recording this out and about, strolling in London, down by the River Thames. And Andy Ramage is a repeat guest. He's so good, he's come on again. And this time got to meet him in person. Last time we did it on Skype, and this time we recorded it down by the river. Very nice place to record it. And Andy Ramage has built a tribe. In fact, he's got over 26,000 members of his tribe, paying members in 120 countries. And his tribe is called 1 Year No Beer. Andy used to be a professional footballer, and then was a proper big shot in the city, and now runs 1 Year No Beer. And today it's all about mindset hacks that can change your relationship with two things: first with alcohol, and secondly with life. You know, he comes at much of what he does from the perspective of alcohol, having given up alcohol and inspiring other people to give up alcohol and live for 1 year with no beer. And he sometimes, encourages people to start off with a month or a few days and then kind of build from there. But it's not just changing your relationship with alcohol, it's changing your relationship with life as well. As I say, he used to be that professional footballer, then he was a broker working in the hothouse of the city, and now he is an author and a tribe builder as well, inspiring people to give up the booze. What an inspiring guy. Here he is, Andy Ramage on Zestology. Good. We're recording. Andy, how you doing?
Good, let's do it.
Yeah, excellent. It's great to finally meet you in person. Obviously,
yes.
We spoke before on Skype, didn't we?
Yeah, that's right.
You have been travelling all over the place. You've been over to see Rich Roll in the States and do his podcast. And you've just been telling me about a podcast you've been doing, Ryan Holiday as well, which is hilarious, how you reeled him in.
Yeah.
The 1 Year No Beer message is kind of really expanding. Just tell me how you got Ryan Holiday involved again.
Well, it's one of those, bit of a blag in that Ryan Holiday was trying to sell his book, The Obstacle is the Way. So it's a few years ago now, but part of that he gave away, if you bought 10 of his books, I can't remember if it was 10 or 20 of his books, a 30-minute slot with him. So I did the maths and thought, hold on, this is a bit of a no-brainer. I think for about 140 quid, it must have been 10 bucks or whatever it was, I could get 30 minutes with Ryan Holiday. I knew that would probably cost $1,000 in reality, so I got him on and he fired up the Skype, as it were, and he said, what do you want to talk about? And I said, well, can we do a podcast? And he was highly unimpressed.
Was he?
Yeah. You can
hear
hear
quite
it.
a big name, Ryan Holiday.
He is a big name,
Yeah.
and if you actually, that podcast is up there, right, on the 1 Year No Beer website. But if you listen to it, the first couple of questions, he's super frosty because he's obviously thinking he's totally tricked me into this here, and then he really gets into it once he realises that I know what I'm talking about, and he doesn't drink himself, funnily enough, which was really cool. I didn't know that. But he's got a really powerful blog actually, and it's like why I don't drink and why I don't give a shit, or something along those lines. So it made for a really good podcast in the end, but yeah, super sneaky.
That's so funny. Look, mate, if you want to sell 20 books, you want to get the gain the Amazon ratings, you got to back it up.
You got to turn up.
You got to do whatever.
Show up. Yeah.
Anyway, look, it's great to be sitting here midsummer by the river. We might have a couple of rowdy little interruptions in the background, but that's all fine. It's all part of the fun, isn't it? And I always love it when my sports career and my kind of personal development, self-helpy woo-woo career collide. And obviously I remember you from when you were a footballer.
Yeah.
And you've had this wide-ranging, weird and wonderful career, from football to trading to living in Ireland and all the rest, and now 1 Year No Beer. Perhaps kind of just briefly go over what's happened in your kind of adult life which has brought you to this stage.
Yeah, so I guess start with the football story. So at 16 I left school to be a trainee with Leyton Orient. I did that for 2 years, and then I reached that point, a bit like the X Factor, isn't it, where you get to 18 and pretty much it was as brutal as this. You queued up outside the manager's office, who was Peter Eustace at the time, and you found out on that day if you were going to be a professional or not. And bearing in mind, I'd signed from the age of 10, right? This was my life from 10 to 18, and I queued up outside, like feeling like a hero, walked in there and left devastated because I wasn't good enough. I was released. That's it. It's over. And I remember going to meet my brother. My brother tells the story because I'd forgot this, but apparently I'd told my brother. I said to him, look, I appreciate your thoughts on this and your feelings, but I'm going to prove you wrong. And I did. I found a professional club, Gillingham, became a professional, scored in the professional league, 1 goal. It was a thunderbolt from about 5 yards. And I loved it. And just when it was getting exciting, really against all the odds, I got injured, unfortunately, and made my way to Ireland, where I spent some time playing with Sligo Rovers and Laurie Sanchez, which I absolutely loved, by the way. Fell in love with Ireland. It's just a beautiful place, brilliant people. My wife's now Irish, so I've got to say that. But I do love it over there, to be fair. And then at the age of sort of 25, did a bit of travelling and wound up in the city of London as an oil broker, would you believe? It just so happens my older brother was an oil trader, so basically he got me a job.
You got him in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bit of nepotism.
Yeah.
Never goes amiss.
Yeah.
And within, I think, a sort of record time, I just fell in love with this industry, this environment. The guys, you've probably seen them on the big pits with the bright jackets, screaming and shouting at one another. That was me, and I absolutely loved it. You know, it was a bit close to professional
Wolf of
sport.
Wall Street.
Yeah, that was sort of a bit like that, if you can imagine. Slightly less tame.
Yeah.
Or more wild, depending on where you were. But for me, I loved it. It was like professional sport, fast-paced, electric, the odd slide tackle. There was even the odd sending off within our office. Believe me, it's pretty wild at times.
Yeah.
And in record time, I built a big business, and I reached that sort of conventional place of success in many ways. The career, the cash, wonderful family, house, all that sort of stuff. And I had one of those sort of slow epiphanies. I was about mid-30s. And I'd got there, I'd been like struggling all my life to reach this point, to reach this place where I think happiness resides. And I think you probably went through something similar. And I sort of looked around the office, and I should have been sort of moonwalking and listening to choirs of angels as I heard my bliss. And there was nothing. I was a bit like, what? I'm 5 out of 10. I'm not even a 7 out of 10. Like, how has this possibly happened? You know, I've given up so much. And bearing in mind, at this point, I was overweight, unfit, unhealthy, unhappy. My relationships were strained across the board to get to this place of conventional success, and I was like, this just doesn't make any sense. I don't aspire to this. And I actually had a quick look around the city and other more successful, I'm doing air quotes as I say that, people, and I saw much of the same: broken bodies, broken minds, broken homes. I was like, I don't aspire to that. What's the point? And that was very much one of those moments when I went, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And I didn't want to run away from the city and like hide in a monastery, as it were. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to stay in this game, and I'm going to do it on my terms. And that was the real genesis for me. I resigned from my job to set up a new broking business, and I thought, I'm going to come back a different person. I'm going to learn about well-being and all these types of things, and mindfulness and diet and nutrition. So I came back a year later to set up a new business, and part of that process, I decided not to drink, which was huge, right? Because no one I knew ever decided proactively not to drink. And just to clarify my relationship with alcohol, I didn't have a problem. There was no addiction, as it were. I was a middle lane drinker. That's the way I describe it. Sometimes I drink moderately, sometimes averagely, occasionally heavily, which is basically everyone on the planet and everyone I knew. But I suspected it was holding me back, and I was right. It was the one thing that was preventing me reaching all the things that I wanted to achieve, like in my life. In many ways. So that really was, it was more of a fluke than a deliberate thing, because I'd looked at mindfulness, I'd looked at nutrition, I'd looked at exercise, but all of those things I couldn't quite get them to stick because I had no consistency. Because at that point I was still entertaining clients, which meant going out and drinking. I was still being super social, which for me meant going out and drinking. I was celebrating, commiserating, de-stressing, all the usual stuff with alcohol. So I had no consistency in my life. So when I removed it and I got consistent, everything started to change. It was like this transformation in my life. And funny enough, that business that I set up in an industry that pretty much said to me, you're foul if you stop drinking, I grew it 7 times bigger in half the time.
Really?
And the reason I did that is because I was showing up every day. It was like having alcohol-free superpowers.
Pause there. Someone's watching very loud and fairly lame sounding videos on the bench next to us.
Right, okay.
I'm going to pause and we're going to relocate, all right?
Gotcha.
Don't know what it is, but it seems to have cockerels and birds cheeping and all sorts on that video. So I'm going to pause now. Okay, we've relocated and got rid of some of the distractions. So yeah, and I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because in terms of not drinking culturally, it is it's probably easier than it was 15, 20 years ago, but it's still hard. And I know I drink a lot less than a lot of my mates. And I was just telling you before we started, I like to go to the cricket, and we have long boozy days, and we've got the Ashes coming up this summer, and we've got some cricket days, and they'll start drinking about 11:30, and I can't do it.
Yeah.
Oh, and then it gets to there's a tipping point. It gets to about 4:15 in the afternoon, and I can tell they're just tipping over the edge. And I will have had a couple of drinks. I do drink a bit, but just not very much. And there's part of me that feels slightly left out even now, even though they're my best mates, and they don't care that I don't drink that much. But I do miss those days of getting smashed to bits as well, and feel slightly left out as well. So that's just for me to come to terms with, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think for me, I had to make peace with that. I had to make peace with the fact that my life was changing a bit, but the benefits were so gigantic, it sort of outweighed those moments. Like for me, my big thing was just a Saturday afternoon in the pub with my best friends. I loved that. Just sitting there and watching the world go by and with no concerns or no worries. But often when you sort of reminisce about that stuff, it's like about days gone by. That was before I had kids and all that sort of stuff. So it's not really the truth. And what happened next, if you know what I mean? The days that were missed because you couldn't be arsed, or you're too hungover, or you're a bit lethargic and inconsistent. I was much heavier and all those type of things. So the benefits that I gained were so vast that it was quite comfortable in the end, just to make peace with the fact that, do you know what, there are going to be those little moments when I probably go, I'd quite like to be there, but why bother? Why bother when you've got all this good stuff over here, if you know what I mean?
What, thinking back to your professional footballer days, how old are you?
So I'm 44.
44, okay. So you're slightly after you're well after the kind of Paul Merson generation, the Tony Adams generation. But I imagine there was still a big drinking culture in football at that point as well.
Oh, absolutely. It was part of it. I remember bumping into the Middlesbrough team, actually, funny enough, in Dublin when I was playing out in Ireland. And they were all on the absolute lash. That's why they were there. And that was the Brian Robson era, right?
Yeah,
if you can imagine.
Yeah.
So he was a big drinker, wasn't he?
Was,
Paul McGrath. Gazza was there. Gazza was playing for Middlesbrough at the time. He came in with Jimmy Five Bellies into the pub we were in. Funnily enough, we were all footballers in Ireland, and we were in a pub, and all the Middlesbrough team walked in. A lot of our lads knew him. Ian Gilzine, who was playing for Sligo at the time, his dad was the Grey Fox, who played for Tottenham. He was Gazza's boot boy. So we launched into this massive piss up, for want of a better word, and honestly it was a great day. I'm not going to deny that, but you remember, like, culturally how sort of it's just not professional. It doesn't feel right anymore that they were on, like, in between games and basically on a glorified let's go out and get sort of smashed for 3 or 4 days and then go back and play on the Saturday.
And I don't want to do Brian Robson an injustice, but sounds like it was kind of, he might not have been there, but it was kind of sanctioned by the manager. He wouldn't have been disproving such a night out.
No, I'll tell you exactly what happened. They told us the story. They all got ready for a big session, and they were told they were going for a big long run, and it was like, right, get ready lads, this is going to hurt. And they sort of did their warm-up run of about 5k, doing some stretches, and one of the lads looked round and he went, see that pub, that's where you're going. And it was like, there's a wad of cash, off you go. And it was literally, it's true, as simple as that.
How did they get away? How did people actually go out and play?
I know, it's amazing, really. I mean, when you think back, it's not right. It was sort of comical back then because I don't think we knew any better. That's the difference now. I think we do know. We do know better, and our sportsmen have changed so much. I'm sure you've seen it. Of course, there's the odd story of the odd footballer falling out of a nightclub at 3 a.m. But what the press don't pick up on is that most footballers now don't drink, or drink very little, because they're super professional. They've worked it out to be at your peak in anything, football, business, entrepreneurship, your relationships. Alcohol doesn't play a part.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things I'm interested in talking about with you is, obviously you've got loads of members now, 1 Year No Beer, and your Facebook adverts pop up on my feed pretty much every day. And I know it's kind of growing very quickly, isn't it? You've had loads of investment and all the rest of it. And what I'm interested in is what replaces alcohol, because I feel like, I don't think there's that much good about alcohol, but I always used to think that one of the things that kind of, perhaps it wasn't positive, but it did help with, is that it was like a release of the pressure valve. So, you'd be building up, you might be, studying for exams for 3 weeks, go out and have a big night, and you kind of feel a little bit better afterwards because you've just forgotten about all your worries. And we hear now that more millennials and more young people are more anxious than ever before and have anxiety. What is their pressure valve release if they don't have a night out? What replaces it?
Yeah, do you know what? It's a brilliant question because it's really difficult. Because it's so easy. I think that's what makes alcohol so ubiquitous and so attractive in many ways, because it's so easy just to pop open a cork or open a bottle of beer and just almost wipe the day out or wipe the afternoon off. And to achieve that without it is much more difficult. But it can be done. It just takes a bit more effort and a bit more planning, and that's what we're all about. One, beer, very much so. It's about trying to give people the skills to actually set things up that will make a difference. For example, some people love exercise. That just makes a real difference to them. The endorphins, the buzz, the euphoric high, but requires a lot more effort than just opening a can of beer, as it were. But you get a similar result from it for some people. Other people love reading, walking, connecting. I think it's time to get to know yourself a bit better, because what happens is it's not just those big pressure moments. People then start to drink, like we're all guilty of it, once or twice a week for every celebration, commiseration. So that sort of reward that it gave you for that, pressure valve release, as it were, is always abused a little bit because we start to use it all the time. So I think what happens when you stop drinking, you give yourself an opportunity to figure out the things that achieve that for you in a really healthy, productive way. And once you've figured it out, you're unstoppable, because then you skip all the lethargy and tiredness and can't be arsedness, and you get that consistency back, and then you start to get fitter and faster, and all these wonderful things start to happen, and you get to know yourself a bit better and know that, do you know what's going to do it for me? Going for a big run. It's going to help me completely de-stress, and then you gain that healthy skill rather than I'm just going to have a beer.
What about legal drugs, legal highs, psychedelics? Are you interested in any of that? I mean,
No.
Obviously we've just had a coffee.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the coffee in itself, sugar. I mean, where do you stop with it? So I think all of these things, like anything, you have to. And I don't like the word moderate, because I think moderate sounds like you want lots of something and you deliberately try to have less. And I think that's why people find moderating so difficult.
Yeah.
But in reality, I'm trying to get to a place myself of a sort of this naked mind. There's a great book called This Naked Mind in the alcohol space by a lady called Annie Grace. But I almost like that theory of no coffee, no sugar, no alcohol. See what's really under there.
Yeah.
What's it really like to have your full vitality, your full zest for life, because we almost don't know when there's a bit of coffee in the system or a bit of sugar in the system or alcohol in the system. And the thing is with alcohol, that's why it's the biggest one that holds people back. It hangs around for days and days and days, because when you think about it, it's not the obvious nausea or hangovers, it's the fact that it destroys your sleep. And look at all the science about sleep and productivity and motivation and energy and mental health. It's like disastrous, and alcohol destroys your sleep. So it takes you out for 2 or 3 days every time you have one drink. And that's why I'm not talking about problem drinkers or addicts. I'm talking about basically everyone listening to this podcast who drinks, which is once or twice a week or whatever it is. It's constantly sort of holding you back. It's like kryptonite to your dreams. That's how I describe it.
Just interrupting this podcast for one moment to tell you that it is brought to you by Ketoko MCT oil, extra pure 99.8% C8 MCT oil, very pure, very good quality. This podcast is all about energy and vitality, and that's why we are brought to you by pretty much the best quality MCT oil on the market. If you find Ketoko MCT oil on Amazon and you enter the code ZESTOLOGY, you will get 10% off. And it'd be a pleasure to give you 10% off for a little bit more energy. You put it into your bulletproof coffee. It's perfect for bulletproof coffee because it's completely tasteless. Or you can drizzle it on salads or food, or you can cook with it, or all the rest of it as well. So Ketoko MCT oil. There are other Ketoko products as well, including collagen and keto green powder. Only 2 grams of carbs, so that's good as well, isn't it? Search for Ketoko. You'll get 10% off if you enter the code ZESTOLOGY for the MCT oil. And now back to the podcast. Well, I mean, did we talk about the tracking device that I wear last time we did the interview?
No, I don't.
This is a Neuro Ring.
Oh yeah.
And it measures your heart rate variability, body temperature, respiratory rate, depth of sleep, and that kind of thing. And one of the really interesting things is that, and I have mentioned this on the podcast before, but when I drink, my heart rate overnight is massively elevated. And you can tell it the next day. You just log into your app and it'll tell you, oh, last night your heart rate was between 10 and 15 beats a minute higher overnight after having had maybe even one drink.
Yeah.
Only one drink can elevate it by 10 or 15 beats a minute. That's amazing. That's cold, hard data. I like a bit of data to prove to you what effect your body is going through when you've had alcohol, which is really cool, actually.
Yeah, and I think people just don't realise. That's a bit of my frustration with it all at the moment, and I think it's starting to seep through. The science is coming through. The science has been there forever, the same as there's been science around smoking. But, it's a number one carcinogenic. It leads to all sorts of different types of cancer, specifically breast cancer. People don't realise that. It is holding people back, and it is causing problems in people's lives, even at a moderate level. That's the thing. I'm trying to get people into the mindset. It's not about waiting until there's some problem to address alcohol. Address it now, because you'll be, and I say this a lot, an even better parent, and even better at your job, even fitter, even faster. And the key word there is even. It's not to say that you're not already a brilliant parent or you're not already brilliant at your job, but I guarantee it, you'll be even better when you remove the booze. It's a total no-brainer, and it's not about giving up forever as well. That's the thing. It's about transforming your relationship with it. So if you do want to drink once or twice a year at the cricket with your mates, make it once or twice a year. That's not the end of the world. That's still amazing, right? Where the problem kicks in is when people are just drinking sort of mindlessly for every celebration, commiseration, day that ends in Y, because that's sort of what they do. But if you're tactical with it, why not transform your relationship? And if you feel amazing, keep going.
Yeah. So obviously you've just been over to, was it recently you went to LA to see Rich Roll?
Yeah, earlier this year.
I mean, how are you experiencing the kind of growth of the message? How's it kind of taking off? What was your experience of going over to LA? And Rich Roll's obviously a really big podcast. For people who don't know about him, he's a kind of vegan athlete podcast, isn't it? And I know how popular he is. Have you just picked the right message at the right time, do you think?
Absolutely. I think we've got really lucky in that sense, but lucky in a really good way, in a positive way, because when we looked at this 5 years ago, where I stopped drinking 5.5 years ago, and it's probably 6 months into that alcohol-free adventure, I thought, do you know what, I want to share this with people. I'd lost 3 stone in weight. Talking of heart rate, my resting heart rate went from 68 back down to 44.
Did it?
Yeah, it was amazing. So I lost...
How do you measure that then?
That was with my cardiologist.
No way.
Just to expand on the story, so 6 years ago, my dad had a treble bypass, my 2 brothers and I got tested. I had heart disease. Not good in your mid-30s.
What form did that take? Clogged arteries?
Yeah, so via a calcium score, I should have been a 0, should not have been on the score. My 2 brothers are 0, I was a 6 or something, right? And it goes up into the hundreds, but basically I've got heart disease. Yeah. That was a big awakening as well. But at that stage, I'm 3 stone heavier than I am now. My body fat was 35%. I was drinking, like I was saying, doing everything wrong, stressful job, eating crap diet, not exercising, all of those things. Then I started out on this well-being adventure, this alcohol-free adventure. I went back to that same cardiologist 2 years later, and he was like, this is astounding. He couldn't get his head around the fact that, my lifestyle changes had made such a difference. So my resting heart rate went from 68 to 44. I'd lost 3 stone. My body fat was below 10%. And then the really cool part, he went, your heart disease? He went, you've stopped it in its tracks. And then it got better. He went, look, we were so interested by your results. We've taken a closer look. It looks as though you've reversed your heart disease. A part of that was the plant-based diet. I'm convinced by that as well. I haven't mentioned that yet, but I moved towards a plant-based diet. That was one of the reasons I got friendly with Rich Roll and whatnot, because I knew it would be the best diet for me, having had problems with my heart, plus all the lifestyle changes that I'd made. It culminated in reversing heart disease. It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Oh, that's bloody amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised you haven't got one of these trackers now, because bearing in mind the fact you've had some great results with heart rate, it is quite addictive to see. I mean, I noticed, for example, that my heart rate can be elevated if I've watched TV late, for example, and that kind of thing. Or certainly if you eat late, that has a big impact on heart rate variability overnight as well. So I definitely recommend you look into it.
Yeah, I mean, these things are fantastic. And the first time I saw it was with Rich Roll, funny enough. Yeah. When I went over to talk to him. And I know you mentioned earlier about the sort of the alcohol-free message. 5 years ago, no one was really talking about it. But even in the last year, it's gaining so much traction. Alcohol-free alternatives are everywhere now. Yeah. They're totally stopped. My local bar in Shenfield, in Essex, The Lot, has Heineken 0.0 on draft. Yeah. Like, how cool is that?
Shenfield, are there a lot of West Ham players around there?
Yeah.
I'm sure a mate of mine's brother used to work in a bar in Shenfield. I mean, this is years ago, but he said that every time they'd come in, they would never carry spare change. They'd pay for everything in notes, and they wouldn't want any change for it. So he made amazing tips every time the West Ham players came in.
I know what it is. It's probably Holland's bar. It was owned by a guy called Patsy Holland originally. He was an old Tottenham player. who was a coach of mine at Leyton Orient, funny enough.
Right,
But yeah, all the players sort of flock to it. But yeah, the alcohol-free message is changing so much, and it's becoming more acceptable. We've got a long, long way to go, but a lot of what we do at One You Know Beer really is trying to release the social pressure. We touched on this, you and I, earlier, didn't we? That we just want it to be okay for one of your mates or your girlfriends or whatever it is to take a break. That's it, just be okay. You don't have to be like high-fiving and break-dancing and doing little jigs if they want to take a break. But it's really important that we give people the space to take a break. Like, we had a survey in conjunction with Stirling University of over a couple of thousand people, and 97%, right, you just don't see results like that on surveys. 97%, basically everyone said the number one reason they didn't take a break from alcohol was because of social pressure. It's nuts, isn't it? 85% said they felt pressured at work to drink. So all of this cultural pressure's going on. So what that says to me is there's so many people that are desperate to take a break because they're like me and probably think, do you know what, I'll probably feel a lot better and fitter and faster and all that stuff, but they haven't quite got the confidence to get over the social pressure. So if we can release that social pressure a bit, there'll be many, many more people come and take a challenge.
Yeah, it's difficult. I went for a drink with my new neighbour the other day, and it's just to kind of get to know you drink. We went to that pub just down there, and he ordered a beer and I ordered a sparkling water, and I made some lame excuse like, oh yeah, I've got an early start tomorrow kind of thing, but actually I just didn't want to drink. And I shouldn't feel any pressure or any kind of awkwardness around that, but there still is that residual, what does he think of me? Which I wonder if, like, younger people actually just don't bother about so much. They probably don't. I mean, it's just like us having gone to I went to university 20 years ago, and pretty much every night we would go out and have a few drinks.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's why younger people are seeing it differently, and all the trends are younger people are drinking less and less and less, which is fantastic. And I think that sort of that age band of probably 30 to 60 are stuck right knee deep in the drink for every occasion sort of motto. So we feel a bit uncomfortable about saying that we don't drink, or that there's, it's all about status, isn't it? It's all like this evolutionary status. We're like, and that was such a powerful drive to stay part of the group, because when we were on the savannas, had we been thrown out of the group, it meant death, right? So it's really a really powerful drive in us to stay part of the group. That's a good reminder, that. Yeah, and people forget that. So naturally, what do? We want to be like everyone else, right? And if at the moment everyone else is drinking, but here's the secret to all of this: when people start making a bit of a stand and they stop drinking, I was telling you the example earlier, the rest follow so quickly. There's that brilliant social scientist behavioural economics test. I don't know if you're familiar with the line test. Have you ever heard of that test? I'll just explain it really quickly. But basically, they took these school kids and they showed them a couple of lines, and they said, right, but it was all staged. Most of the kids were staged, they were actors, and they were to say that clearly the longer line was the shorter line. Right. And then they tested a few people that weren't in on it. Right. So they showed these two lines, one was clearly shorter than the other. Yeah. And then they went around to the staged actors and said, what one's the longest? And the stage actors said, the shorter one is the longest. Then they asked the normal people, and they all followed suit because they wanted to be part of the tribe. Most of them kept following, and even though against their mind they could see that one was shorter than the other, they went against it. And then what would happen is really interesting. When one person showed doubt, the rest would quickly follow, because they felt comfortable to actually challenge the fact that actually clearly that line is shorter. And it's the same with alcohol free. I genuinely believe it, and I think that's what will happen really quickly, because when people see other people in their groups not drinking, it gets easier for them to say, do you know what, I'm not going to drink.
So the whole problem is, are you familiar with Robert Cialdini?
Yes.
So the kind of persuasion principles, like 6 principles, and obviously the one that makes it really hard to stop drinking is social proof. But also addiction, which is not one of his. But the social proof thing is really interesting because you can use that to your benefit as well. And I suppose that's the benefit of having communities of people who don't drink. Like, for example, I mentioned my mates with the cricket. I've got one mate who does not drink at all. He gave up a few years ago, and it suited his life very nicely. And we're going for a day at the cricket together, and I'm really looking forward to that because it'll be a completely different day, but it'll be a lovely day as well. So the benefit of having groups like yours is then you've got social proof acting positively rather than negatively.
Oh, absolutely. That's what it's all about. It's that positive social pressure almost. And you need a tribe. I think especially at the moment, because the rest of the world pretty much drinks, it's really difficult when you step into that environment and you are the only one, because no one else gets it. They don't get the trials, they don't get the successes. They just don't. They're not on your wavelength, right? And that's not because they're being mean or they're being disrespectful for you. They just don't see it as you do. Whereas when you've got a tribe, One You Know Beer or whatever tribe you want to choose, it's great in there because they get it.
Yeah.
They can cheer you on when you're like crushing it and you're losing weight, you're getting fit, you're getting healthy, but they can also pick you up a bit when you're finding it tough. And I think we all need a tribe. You know, we are these social animals, and back to that sort of status and that social pressure we mentioned earlier about the evolutionary point of view, tribes are really powerful. And I think that's why One You Know Beer's been such a success. We didn't realise it was going to be like that. We just thought we were going to put a little ebook out into the world. Yeah. And then we started a Facebook group and we said, shall we, shan't we? And now that's probably the most powerful thing we have is the tribe, if you know what I mean.
And you've got 15 million of funding, is it? No.
No.
5 million? 1 million?
So
I can't remember.
We've had we're in the second round of funding. So our first round of funding was 1.5 million. And then I think we're going out for another couple of million in as we speak, basically. And the reason we're doing that is to reach more people. Is to try and grow something. Like, and here's the thing, like the alcohol industry spends $1 trillion, I sound like Mike Myers, don't I? $1 trillion on $1 trillion globally on advertising alcohol, right? And what are they advertising? It's cool, fun, sexy. No, it isn't. It's not fair. Like we've just been hit with over the head with the same marketing brush for so long. What about if someone can come the other way now and tell a different story and go, actually, it's cool, fun, sexy to be alcohol free? You know, that's our mission, to try and grow a business that does good in the world. And maybe we're the halftime of the Super Bowl. There's an advert saying it's cool to drink, and then we've got the advert that follows that to say it's way cooler not to drink. That's the dream, you know. And I think it's about time someone stood up to the behemoth in many ways that is the drink industry and start telling the truth. That actually you'll be fitter, healthier, wealthier, more vibrant and happier without alcohol. And it's just about taking a break and experimenting. That's what we're all about. It's like, do a little challenge, 28, 90 days. If you feel great, keep going.
Well, you are a picture of glowing health, Andy.
Luckily we haven't got the cameras on.
We've taken the photos.
All right, good.
No, you look great.
Yeah.
You know, obviously you spend a lot of time, you do a lot of sport still, don't you? And spend a lot of time outdoors and feeling good about life. It's suiting you, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, as I told in my story, I lost all that weight, I got fit and healthy again. And I was saying to you when we arrived, I played netball, funny enough, yesterday against my daughter's school, against the kids, which was lovely. And feeling that, like, energy and that vibrancy and fit and strong.
Who won, the parents or the kids?
The kids destroyed us. Yeah, genuinely.
Kids won.
And we were trying, like, it wasn't, let's just let the kids win. This was like, let's try, come on.
Yeah.
We got close. We were like 1 point behind them at one stage, and they went on to trounce us. I mean, they're amazing. Brilliant. These girls at netball, these little 11-year-olds running rings around all these big burly 6-foot men and women for that matter. And what a great experience. And I reflected on that and thought, how lucky am I that I've got the energy, the vibrancy, all that stuff to do it. And I 100% put it all down to taking a break from alcohol. Not that gave me all of those things, but it was the catalyst that allowed me to get consistent in my diet, in my exercise, in my relationships, in my career, in my business. It was taking a break from the booze. That was it. That's why I don't drink. I could go back tomorrow, but why would I? I choose not to, if you know what I mean. That's a completely different mindset to feel like you've given something up. I'm not giving anything up. I've just gained this massive advantage in all areas of my life, so I keep doing it.
Yeah. Right, let's see how we're doing. I think we've not got that much time left. So, question I've asked you before, or the two questions I've asked you before, but I'm going to ask you again. What is one book that you would recommend and one tip for living with more energy? The energy one, I wonder if it's something to do with alcohol. But let's start with the book. What book is, it might be something you read recently or something that you love?
Yeah, my favourite book, I've got so many, but one that always stands out for me is The Shortness of Life by Seneca. On the Shortness of Life by Seneca, and get the Penguin Classic version, because I've found out recently some people have got a different version of that book, different translation, and it didn't quite work as well. But I love all the ancient philosophy, the Stoic philosophy. I love that book. Like from 2,000 years ago, you'll open it and it's like speaking to you today. It's like poignant, it's on the ball, it's like nows. And what's amazing about it, sorry, because I get excited about this stuff, they were going through the exact same things then as we are now. Nothing's changed. All right, we're on the moon and we've got the internet and we've done all this amazing technological stuff, but ultimately, as a race, we're just going through the same shite.
Yeah,
it's the same stuff, which I find endlessly fascinating. So I love that book. Anything by Seneca's great, but the Penguin Classic, On the Shortness of Life.
That is true, isn't it? I mean, the challenge is, I always think we live in such a unique time, and it's such a digital cluster head fuck at the moment because we've got so many kind of intrusions on our mental bandwidth. But actually, Romans had the same thing as well.
It's the same. Read that literally from 2,000 years ago, and they're going through the exact same things.
Same challenges.
It's the same stuff, just dressed up in a different way. I think that's just the human psyche, as it were. And the trick is to learn how to deal with those things proactively, whether that's meditation, quality diet, exercise, quiet time, all those things. Ultimately, it's the simple stuff, and I think that's where all the vibrancy of life comes from, is doing the basics right, like connection. This is the one thing that we're really losing, I think, is connection. Amongst 21st century living, I think, is pushing connection out of our lives, and we know this for a fact. Even social scientists 40 years ago, you probably know this fact, that if people were to say how many people they could count on for an emergency or a celebration, it used to be 3 people, which is not a lot, right? It still feels very stingy. Now, they've run it recently, it's 0. Can't go any lower than that. It's 0 on average. Isn't that fascinating? And that's maybe why...
That's really sad.
It's really sad, and I think there's a lot...
It can't be 0. I mean, I'm thinking, surely I could count on a few people.
Well, yeah, exactly, but you're
the
an
baby's
exception.
going to be there, he's not going to have any choice.
But isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's down to 0. It can't go any lower than that.
That's sad, isn't it?
And I think cultivating connection is a really important thing for us all to do. Hence why we're here, right? This is lovely.
Yeah. Well, that is a good tip. And actually, we were talking beforehand about the monetary value of having a podcast, and there's definitely a direct profitability to having a podcast, which is fairly low, but makes it worth doing just about. But that's not the reason I do it. The indirect value of being able to reach out to people like you, have a coffee, feel inspired, sit in the sun by the river and record a podcast, that's the real richness of doing this podcast.
That is worth its weight in gold, believe me. And I think, a top tip, we were talking about the energy tip, is connection. And one thing about connection, you have to be the bigger man or woman, because everyone else is caught in the same trap, right? Everyone else is caught in the same 21st century living, so they don't realise that their connections are being pushed out. So when you connect with the fact that you need more connection, you have to be the one that makes, not he said, she said, they haven't called me, he hasn't phoned me, just make that connection again. Pick up the phone, text, email, get in front of people. It's super important.
Yeah, set it up on text and email.
Yes, but get it all in person,
There's no point in having friendships that just reside on WhatsApp but don't come into real life.
No, and I think that's why we're suffering. Genuinely do. It's just what is that? It's nothing,
It's great to see you. I am not going to go fully 1 year no beer because I've just discovered the world's cleanest vodka, which I told you about last night. But it'll be a very occasional dabble, so don't worry.
Oh, good.
Yeah. No, it's really good to see you again. And where can people find out more about 1 year no beer?
So oneyearnobeer.com, on all the socials at 1 year no beer, Instagram, Facebook. I'm Andy Ramage, MV for motivation. I'm doing a bit more on Instagram just to play around with that type of stuff, or on LinkedIn, Andy Ramage.
And the Ryan Holiday interview is on your
on the website,
archive, and I'm going to come on your podcast at some point.
Yes, you are.
Which I look forward to as well. In fact, I've been on it. Have I?
I think you may have done.
Might have been. Anyway, we'll do.
We're doing another one.
Point. But the Ryan, I'm going to listen to the Ryan Holiday
just at the
one.
start. Even it's quite funny. You'll hear how frosty.
Do you hear the bit on the podcast where you say,
No.
Can we record a podcast?
No. That was sort of teed up. I cut that bit. I've probably got it somewhere. To be honest, I should dig it out.
Yeah. Andy, great to see you. Thanks, mate.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to Andy, and thank you for listening to Zestology as well. Got to tell you, over the next few weeks, I think you're going to really enjoy the Zestology podcast lineup that I've got for you. Next week, it is Donna Lancaster back for a third time on Zestology. Definitely one of my favourite guests, and I know you'll love her. And after that, Katie Brindle on the ancient item. This is an ancient item that helps you lose weight, tone up, and stop going bald. Do you know what that is? You'll find out in a couple of weeks on Zestology. So that's the lineup for the next few weeks. Excellent guests. Really enjoyed meeting them all, and Andy as well. A great day spent with Andy. As always, thank you for listening. If you'd like the 3 Zesty Things newsletter, you can head to tonywrighton.com. It's all self-explanatory once you get there. And that is kind of like a compliment, if you like, to the podcast. It goes out every Monday morning, and it's it's all about energy, isn't it? I mean, it is. Everything is energy. As I said before on Zestology, this podcast is all about vitality and living a zestier life. And I suppose in the blog, I try different energy hacks for kind of living with more vitality. And it is very much the good, the bad and the ugly. And the bad and the ugly, you don't have to use them because I've tried them out and I've weeded them out. So mainly we just focus on the good stuff. Well, I might tell you about the bad stuff so you don't have to try that stuff. 3 Zesty Things newsletter. If you head to tonywrighton.com, you can subscribe to that. Plenty of good podcasts coming up soon, so I'll see you next week. And in the meantime, Kitoko MCT oil is available on Amazon, UK, Italy, France, Germany and Spain. Enter the code ZESTOLOGY for 10% off. Thanks. See you next week.